In just 8 days, I will be on the way to Kansas City. As a matter of fact, 1 week from today, I will be en route to Kansas City. And we just talked about our 53-man roster yesterday, the initial 53-man roster. Now, the reason that initial is so critical in this sense is because things are not always what they seem, and they change so rapidly. Today, we are expecting some information to come out, not only about the practice squad, which can be fielded at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but some moves that the Detroit Lions will make to kind of fill in some pieces, interchange, if you will, some pieces on the 53-man roster. Now, I did the reaction in real time, and just going from the dome, all reaction. Didn't really have time to really process what the Lions were potentially doing. And a couple things stood out. The inclusion of Will Harris, who seems to be this version of Miles Killebrew, but a bit worse, right? The fact that we kept 5 wide receivers, and the fact that we only had 2 running backs on the roster, those being Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Well, looking through the comment section, having some time to process and just looking at other things, the Detroit Lions are actually very smart. They employed a tactic that will get them the players that they want, but also allow them to keep some players that they want to keep for later down the line. And allow me to explain what I mean. This is coming from Pride of Detroit, so shout out to those guys. Said, while fans are likely scouring the waiver wire to see who the Lions will be adding, I'm not looking any further than their own cuts. This will be Jeremy Reisman. If I had to guess right now, Reynolds is likely on his way back to the roster. As you see, as a veteran player with 4 years of experience, Reynolds was released, not waived. That means he is not subject to waivers. The Lions may have very well approached Reynolds, told him they are going to cut him with the full intention of signing him back in a couple of days. Reynolds is a good candidate to make this move because he has no guaranteed money on his contract. Therefore, no dead cap is cut. Now, you're talking about the strategic level. The kind of yesterday was a surface reaction, but letting some time pass, digging into it a little more, you see that the Detroit Lions employed a strategy. Now, I have seen some of you guys talk about this in the comment section, that this is potentially a strategy. And what we're going to find out what they're going to do later to potentially bring room for Craig Reynolds and others. So the 5 wide receivers doesn't mean we have to keep 5. I mean, from Mike Evans could not even be a thing. Chase Cota could be, or any other variation of receivers and or running backs. But why did they do that with Craig Reynolds? Here's what Jeremy had to say. Continue. Because it's very likely that Detroit is going to make a second round of roster cuts, and the most likely outcome is sending a player or 2 to injured reserve. If a team wants to put a player on IR, but have them eligible to return after a minimum of 4 weeks, that player must make the initial 53-man roster. The Lions just so happen to have 2 players who are currently injured on the 53-man roster, Julian Okwara and Ifeatu Melifonwu. If Detroit had put either player on IR prior to the cutdowns, their season would be over. If Detroit puts either of those players on IR after 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, it would open up a spot for Reynolds to return or a different running back. And that seems like the most likely reason Detroit made the moves they did. Now, again, yesterday's reaction was just in real time, didn't really have time to process. I don't think I had all the information either. I didn't even know. I knew Iffy was hurt. I didn't know Julian was hurt. So that's the thing, like the things we can't see. So that means that, like we learned about Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy, I don't remember if he's out for the year. I can't remember. But what the Lions, this was a strategic move. And what they did was they're going to put most likely Julian and or Iffy on basically the short-term IR, which will put them on the shelf for 4 weeks. I want to say DJ Chark did something very similar in the middle of the season last year. So what they're going to do, they're going to put them on short-term IR, most likely, which would create 2 spots. One spot could go to Craig or another running back. The other spot could go to that number 6 wide receiver or another wide receiver or even another position entirely. So this was a strategic thing. It is most likely that Craig could be on his way back. And I personally believe, while last night I was just like, oh man, what are they doing? What running back could they be looking at? But then you think about it. And Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, what do they scream about? Having their group of guys, like their guys, right? Craig has been on this team for, I want to say this is his 3rd year. He had to battle to make the cut last year. He just barely made it, put in some work last year. And out of the running backs in the preseason, Craig Reynolds was the best of those once Mohammed went down. I mean, I really still believe it would have been Craig and then Mohammed number 4. I think that would have pushed out Jefferson. I always said Snell had a long shot to make the team, and he actually surprised. I thought he had a better shot once the preseason ended, but just when he got here, that it would be difficult to kind of overcome the people that were already here. So it could be any number of positions or personnel that could be coming in with a couple players going out. And again, there are players that can be cut as well. So when you start getting into waive versus cut, I know it's a very, like, you have to be very specific. And when I have that information, I will say it, whether they're waived or cut, because it does make a difference. If you are waived, you have to go through the waiver process. You have to clear waivers. Then basically you could come back to the Detroit Lions. If you don't clear waivers, that means you were picked up by another team. If you guys remember, okay, when Josh Reynolds was waived by the Tennessee Titans back in 2021, he had to clear waivers. At this point, the Detroit Lions were 0-8, somewhere around there. We were first on the waiver wire. We had first dibs at Josh Reynolds. We claimed him off waivers. He would have had to go through the other teams to clear waivers. So Craig, maybe they did that because they cut Craig because Craig and made a kind of a gentleman's agreement that he would come back, because if they were to waive a player, that person has to clear waivers, and the Lions can't control that. Right now, it's an agreement between Craig. And if you think about it, with David Blau was, I want to say he was waived last year. I can't remember, but the Lions tried to, because you don't have to come back after you've been waived. And David Blau returned. At least I don't think you do. I'm sure you guys will correct me in the comment section, because you do. And I appreciate it. I don't, necessarily like being wrong, but I make mistakes. I don't know everything. I don't claim to be that guy. So anyway, let me know. What do you think? Do you think Craig Reynolds will return? Do you think Chase Cota or any other, what players do you think will return? Do you think the Lions are planning this? I do. I think that they are planning this. I didn't even know Julian was hurt. But I knew there was some finagling going on somewhere, that something was going to change. I also believe that it could be something else. Maybe Will Harris does not stay on this team. A lot of people are becoming available, and the Lions, but we'll know all of that stuff later today. This week will start taking shape for that final 53-man roster. That will be another video as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching, commenting, subscribing, because you guys are the lifeblood. You are the engine to this channel. I'm just the conductor. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.